The first thing Maya Johnson felt was the cold biting through her jeans like teeth, sharp and unforgiving, the kind of cold that didn't just chill the air but seemed to think its way into your bones. The patrol car door slammed shut with a sound that echoed louder than it should have, a heavy metallic thud that made her flinch. And then the lock clicked, a small, ordinary noise that suddenly meant everything. Outside, snow swirled in thin, angry sheets, scraping against the windshield like fingernails. Inside, the engine was off, the heat was off, the radio crackled once and went silent. Maya wrapped her arms around herself and stared at the fog already forming on the glass, her breath short and shaky, her phone still in her hand with no signal bars left. She was 16 years old, alone and locked in the back of a police car on one of the coldest days the city had seen in years. Just minutes earlier, Officer Daniel Reeves had been standing outside, his jaw tight, his voice flat and irritated as he told her to sit tight and learn how to listen. Now he was gone, his boots crunching away through the snow, leaving Maya with nothing but the ticking of the dashcam clock and the creeping fear that settled deeper with every passing second. She tried the door handle once, then again, harder this time, panic rising in her chest when it didn't move. "Hello?" she called out, her voice small, swallowed by the thick glass. No answer came back. The dashcam light blinked steadily, red and unblinking, a silent witness she didn't notice yet. Maya pressed her forehead to the cold window and squeezed her eyes shut, thinking about her father, Chief Marcus Johnson, who had kissed her on the forehead that morning and warned her to drive carefully because the roads were bad. She had promised him she would. She had no idea how a simple stop on her way home from school had turned into this, or how the numbers quietly counting up on the corner of a screen were already beginning to seal someone else's fate. Officer Daniel Reeves stood near the front of his patrol car, collar turned up against the wind, irritation buzzing under his skin like static. The cold had a way of sharpening everything, sounds, movements, tempers, and today it seemed to sharpen his impatience most of all. He glanced down at his notepad, then back at the quiet residential street, its houses half buried under snowbanks, windows glowing faintly behind drawn curtains. The stop had been routine, or it should have been. A rolling stop at a snow-covered intersection, a nervous teenager behind the wheel, hands gripping the steering wheel too tightly. But when Maya Johnson had questioned why she needed to step out of the car, something in Reeves had snapped. He told himself it was her tone, the hesitation, the way she looked past him instead of directly at him. He told himself a lot of things. Now, with her locked in the back seat, he felt a grim sense of control settle over him, the kind that came from ending an argument without having to win it. "Let her cool off," he muttered, though the phrase carried a bitterness he didn't examine too closely. He walked a short distance away, boots crunching loudly, and keyed his radio to respond to a routine call, his voice calm and professional, betraying nothing of the choice he'd just made. Inside the car, Maya's fingers were already stiffening. She rubbed her hands together, then breathed warm air into her palms, watching the condensation bloom and vanish on her skin. Her phone buzzed weakly, one missed notification from a group chat, before the battery icon flashed red and went dark. Panic crept in, slow and heavy, as she tried to remember what her father had once told her about police stops. Stay calm, follow instructions, don't escalate. She had done all of that, hadn't she? Her teeth began to chatter, a soft clicking sound that embarrassed her even though no one could hear it. She shifted on the hard plastic seat, tucking her legs under her, trying to make herself smaller, warmer. "Please," she whispered, not sure who she was talking to anymore. The dashcam continued to record, its wide lens capturing the empty front seats, the falling snow, the digital timestamp ticking forward second by second. Outside, Reeves laughed briefly at something crackling through his radio, his breath puffing white in the air. He didn't look back at the car. He didn't notice the way Maya's movements slowed, or how her breaths grew shallow. To him, time passed the way it always did on shift, measured in calls, codes, and paperwork. To Maya, time stretched thin and sharp, each minute dragging colder than the last, as the red numbers on the screen quietly kept count of a decision that was already slipping beyond his control. By the time the dashcam clock crept past the 20-minute mark, the cold inside the patrol car had changed character, turning from an uncomfortable bite into something heavier and more dangerous. Maya Johnson's breaths came out in shallow bursts, her lips tingling as if they'd been numbed by a dentist's needle. She hugged her knees tighter to her chest, rocking slightly, trying to keep blood moving the way she'd once been taught in a winter safety assembly at school. Her thoughts wandered in strange loops, drifting from fear to confusion and back again. She wondered if Officer Reeves had simply forgotten about her, if he was standing somewhere nearby, stamping his feet and joking with another officer while she faded into the background like a problem set aside. She knocked weakly on the partition once, then again, the sound dull and hopeless. Outside, the street remained eerily calm, snow continuing to fall in soft sheets that muffled everything, even the city's usual distant hum. Across town, Chief Marcus Johnson sat at his desk, surrounded by neatly stacked reports and a blinking desk phone that seemed determined to demand his attention every few minutes. He had been police chief long enough to recognize the rhythm of a winter storm day: minor accidents, stalled vehicles, short tempers. He rubbed his temples, thinking briefly of Maya, picturing her complaining about the cold that morning as she pulled on her jacket. His phone buzzed with a routine update from dispatch. Nothing urgent, nothing out of place. Still, an uneasy feeling tugged at him, subtle but persistent, the way instincts sometimes did after decades on the job. He shook it off and turned back to his screen. Back in the patrol car, Maya's fingers felt clumsy and thick, refusing to respond the way she wanted them to. She tried to unlock the door again, more out of habit than hope, then slumped back against the seat. Her vision blurred slightly, the edges of the world softening. The dashcam captured it all: the way her shoulders sagged, the way her head tipped forward, the digital timestamp glowing steadily in the corner. Officer Reeves returned briefly, passing close enough that his shadow crossed the car, but he didn't open the door. He glanced at his watch, frowned, and keyed his radio again, distracted by another call. To him, it was still just a stop, a minor incident that would barely register by the end of his shift. To the camera, and to Maya, it was becoming something else entirely, a stretch of time that would later be replayed frame by frame, each second heavier than the last as the numbers continued their quiet, unforgiving march forward. When Officer Daniel Reeves finally opened the patrol car door, it wasn't out of concern but impatience, the kind that flared when paperwork started piling up and the day refused to move on. Cold air rushed in, swirling snowflakes into the back seat, and Maya Johnson barely reacted at first, her body slow and uncooperative, as if it belonged to someone else. Reeves frowned, leaning in slightly. "Hey," he said, sharper now, snapping his fingers once in front of her face. "You good?" Maya lifted her head with effort, her eyes unfocused, lips pale. "I'm really cold," she managed, the words slurring together just enough to make Reeves stiffen. He noticed it then, the way her hands trembled uncontrollably, the bluish tint creeping along her fingertips. For a brief moment, uncertainty cracked through his confidence. He told himself she was exaggerating, that teenagers did that this was just nerves and drama. Still, he radioed for medical assistance, his voice carefully neutral, framing it as a precaution. As they waited, he helped her out of the car, steadying her by the elbow as her knees buckled slightly on the icy pavement. The dashcam caught the moment clearly, the door opening, the timestamp glowing bright against the gray sky, Maya's unsteady steps as she was guided toward the sidewalk. The paramedics arrived quickly, their movements efficient and practiced, their expressions tightening the moment they touched Maya's skin. "She's cold," one of them said flatly, wrapping a thermal blanket around her shoulders. "How long was she in there?" Reeves hesitated, just a fraction of a second too long. "A few minutes," he replied, avoiding eye contact. The dashcam continued to record, its lens angled just enough to capture the exchange, the numbers in the corner contradicting him without a word. Maya sat on the stretcher, blanket pulled up to her chin, her teeth still chattering as a medic checked her vitals. She stared at Reeves, recognition flickering in her eyes, a quiet disbelief that someone who wore a badge could leave her like that. At the hospital, the diagnosis came quickly: early-stage hypothermia. Nothing life-threatening, they said, but serious enough. When the call reached Chief Marcus Johnson, it came without context at first, just a report of a juvenile transported for cold exposure. Then the name landed: Maya Johnson. For a moment, the world narrowed to a single ringing silence in his ears. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He simply asked for the details, his expression hardening with each clipped answer. Somewhere in the department's digital archives, a dashcam file was already uploading automatically, its timestamp intact, waiting for someone to press play. Chief Marcus Johnson arrived at the hospital with the kind of controlled urgency that came from years of crisis management. His coat still dusted with snow, his badge catching the harsh fluorescent light of the emergency corridor. He found Maya in a curtained bay, wrapped in warmed blankets, an IV taped carefully to her arm. Her face was pale, but her eyes lifted when she saw him, a mixture of relief and confusion softening her expression. "Dad," she whispered, her voice steadier now, but still thin. Marcus sat beside her, his large hand closing gently around hers, feeling the lingering chill in her fingers. He didn't ask questions right away. He waited until a nurse finished adjusting monitors and stepped back, until the room felt private enough to hold what was about to come. "Tell me exactly what happened," he said quietly, not as a police chief, but as a father. Maya spoke slowly, describing the stop, the tone of Officer Reeves' voice, the click of the lock, the long stretch of silence and cold. As she talked, Marcus's jaw tightened, his mind already mapping procedures, policies, and the weight of what those details meant. He stepped out to make a call, his voice low and precise as he spoke to Captain Robert Hayes in Internal Affairs. "I want the dashcam footage secured immediately," he said. "No edits, no delays." Hayes didn't ask why. The urgency in Marcus's tone answered enough. Within minutes, the file was pulled, timestamps preserved, chain of custody documented. Back at the precinct, Officer Daniel Reeves was finishing his report, typing carefully, choosing his words with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this many times before. He described a brief detention, a non-compliant subject, a short wait for backup. He didn't mention the cold. He didn't mention the time. He submitted the report with a small sense of irritation, convinced the incident was already behind him. Later that evening, Marcus sat alone in his office, the lights dimmed, the dashcam footage playing silently on his screen. He watched the seconds tick by in the corner, watched Maya's small figure shift and curl in on itself, watched the gap between Reeves's written report and the reality unfold in cold, undeniable numbers. Each minute felt heavier than the last. This wasn't just a mistake, it was a violation. He paused the video, leaning back in his chair, the weight of his dual roles pressing down on him. Whatever happened next, he knew, would not be quiet and it would not be easy. By morning, the department felt different, as if the cold had followed everyone inside and settled into the walls. Word moved fast, not in headlines yet, but in glances, lowered voices, and the sudden formality of emails marked urgent. Officer Daniel Reeves was called into an interview room just after roll call, the request delivered with a politeness that felt rehearsed. Captain Robert Hayes was already there, a legal pad open in front of him, a small recorder placed squarely on the table. Reeves took the chair opposite, shrugging out of his jacket, trying to read the room. "What's this about?" he asked, forcing a casual tone. Hayes didn't answer right away. He pressed a button on the recorder and slid a still image across the table. Maya in the back seat, timestamp glowing in the corner. "We're going to walk through your report," Hayes said evenly, "and then we're going to walk through this." As the questions began, Reeves stuck to his story. A few minutes, a difficult subject, a necessary pause. Each answer sounded reasonable on its own, but Hayes let the silence stretch after them, the way experienced investigators did. Then he turned the laptop so Reeves could see the video play. 10 minutes passed, 20, 30. The room stayed quiet except for the faint audio of wind brushing the microphone and the steady, merciless ticking of time. Reeves shifted in his seat, a bead of sweat forming at his temple despite the cold room. "That clock," he said finally, attempting a laugh. "Those things can be off." Hayes stopped the video and looked at him. "This one isn't," he replied. "It syncs with dispatch, vehicle telemetry, and your radio logs." Across town, Maya rested at home, propped up on the couch with blankets and a mug of soup she barely touched. News alerts buzzed on her phone, vague mentions of an internal investigation, nothing naming her yet. She watched the snow fall outside, quieter now, and replayed the moment the door had closed in her mind, the sound echoing longer than it should have. Her father sat nearby, taking calls, his voice calm but unyielding as he spoke to city officials, to union representatives, to the mayor's office. He made it clear that there would be no shortcuts, no quiet resolutions. Back in the interview room, Reeves's confidence eroded minute by minute. The dashcam timestamp loomed larger than anything he could say, a simple line of numbers dismantling explanations he'd relied on for years. When Hayes ended the interview, Reeves was placed on administrative leave pending further review. As he walked out of the precinct into the gray morning, he realized for the first time that this wasn't going to disappear. The cold he'd ignored had followed him, and it wasn't done yet. The story broke 2 days later, not with a press conference, but with a leak. 30 seconds of dashcam footage uploaded by an anonymous account and shared faster than anyone could track. The clip didn't show shouting or violence. It didn't need to. It showed time. Snow drifting across the windshield, the empty front seats, Maya Johnson curled in the back, barely moving, and in the corner, the glowing digital clock, advancing second by second. By noon, every local station was running it on a loop, commentators pausing the frame to circle the timestamp in red, letting the numbers speak for themselves. Outside the precinct, a crowd gathered, bundled in coats, holding signs that read, "How long is too long?" and "Time tells the truth." Officer Daniel Reeves watched the coverage from his apartment, the volume low, his phone lighting up with missed calls he didn't return. The police union released a statement calling for patience, for a full review of the facts, but even Reeves could hear how thin it sounded. Friends texted him cautiously, some offering support, others asking what really happened. He didn't answer those either. He replayed the moment in his head, the choice to walk away, the casual certainty that he was in control, and felt it slip through his fingers. At City Hall, Chief Marcus Johnson stood beside the mayor during a tense briefing, his posture straight, his expression unreadable. He spoke carefully, acknowledging public concern, confirming the investigation, refusing to speculate on outcomes. Reporters shouted questions anyway. "Chief, is it true the girl is your daughter?" one of them called out. The room stilled. Marcus paused, then nodded once. "Yes," he said, "and that changes nothing about the process." The admission rippled outward, adding fuel to an already roaring fire. Some praised his transparency, others accused the department of favoritism, of moving too fast because of who Maya was. At home, Maya watched the press conference from the couch, wrapped in a blanket, her name scrolling across the screen beneath her father's face. It felt unreal, like watching someone else's life unravel. Messages poured in from classmates, strangers, people she didn't know offering support or demanding answers she didn't have. She turned the TV off and stared at the quiet room, trying to reconcile the girl she'd been before the stop with the person she was now. A symbol, a case, a story. Outside, the snow finally stopped, but the clock on the dashcam kept counting in everyone's mind, an unblinking reminder that this was no longer just about one officer or one decision, but about time, truth, and the space between them. The legal phase arrived with a different kind of cold. quieter but more precise, as subpoenas replaced sirens and conference rooms replaced street corners. Assistant District Attorney Laura Mitchell took the lead, assembling the case with a methodical patience that left little room for drama but no space at all for doubt. She met with Maya and Chief Marcus Johnson in a neutral office, walls bare, recorder on the table, asking questions in a steady voice that never rushed. Maya answered carefully, her confidence growing as she realized she didn't need to embellish anything. The truth already lived on the video. Mitchell requested dispatch logs, vehicle telemetry, radio traffic, every digital breadcrumb that could be aligned with the Dashcam's clock. When the timelines were laid side by side, they matched with unsettling precision. Officer Daniel Reeves's report shrank under the weight of it, each sentence undermined by numbers that didn't argue or forget. Reeves's attorney attempted a different strategy, suggesting equipment malfunction, then judgment calls under stress, then a misunderstanding inflated by public pressure. None of it gained traction. During a preliminary hearing, the judge watched the footage in silence, stopping at once to ask a single question about the timestamp synchronization. The answer came clean and confident. Outside the courtroom, cameras flashed, capturing Reeves's stiff posture as he exited, his face tight with a frustration that bordered on disbelief. He had always believed there would be room to maneuver, that experience counted for something. The clock had erased that margin. At home, Maya tried to return to routine, homework, texting friends, sleeping through the night, but found herself startled by small things, the click of a lock, the hum of a car idling. She spoke with a counselor recommended by the department, not because she wanted to, but because her father insisted. Over time, the sessions gave her language for what lingered, a way to place the fear outside herself. Marcus watched her closely, carrying his own weight in silence, navigating calls from city officials while making dinner and asking about school. The case moved forward without fanfare, propelled by evidence rather than outrage, and in that steady advance, the timestamp remained at the center, unchanged, unchallenged, and impossible to outrun. The departmental hearing took place on a gray morning that felt deliberately ordinary, as if the city were trying to strip the moment of drama it no longer needed. Officer Daniel Reeves sat at a long table beneath fluorescent lights, his uniform replaced by a plain suit that hung awkwardly on his shoulders. Behind him, a union representative whispered occasionally, but there was little left to add. Across the room, Captain Robert Hayes presented the findings with measured calm, walking the panel through policy, procedure, and the now infamous timeline. The Dashcam footage played again, larger this time, filling the screen at the front of the room. No one spoke as the minutes passed. The numbers in the corner ticked forward, and with them went the last fragments of Reeves' defense. When the panel chair finally asked if he had anything further to say, Reeves stood, cleared his throat, and spoke about pressure, about misjudgment, about a day that got away from him. His words landed softly and disappeared, unable to compete with evidence that required no interpretation. The decision was delivered this same afternoon. Termination. Badge revoked, certification suspended pending final legal resolution. Reeves nodded as it was read, a reflexive motion that suggested acceptance without peace. Outside, he paused on the steps of the building, the winter air biting again at his face, and for a fleeting moment, he seemed to register the symmetry of it, the cold, the waiting, the sense of time stretching beyond control. Cameras caught the image, and by evening it was everywhere, framed beneath headlines that focused less on him than on the clock that had undone him. Maya learned the outcome from her father, not from the news. Marcus sat with her at the kitchen table, the house quiet except for the low hum of the heater. He explained what the decision meant and what it didn't, careful to leave space for her reaction. She listened, nodding slowly, relief mingling with exhaustion. It didn't feel like victory.
It felt like an ending to something heavy she'd been carrying since the patrol car door closed. Later, she scrolled through messages from classmates and strangers alike, the tone shifting now from outrage to closure. Outside, the last of the snow melted into the gutters, carrying with it the sense that the longest stretch of waiting was finally over, even as the quiet numbers from the dashcam continued to echo in memory.
Spring arrived slowly, almost cautiously, as if the city itself needed time to decide what came next. The legal case concluded without spectacle. Pleas entered, conditions set, files closed with the same administrative finality that had once dismissed the stop as routine. Officer Daniel Reeves faded from the daily news cycle, his name appearing only in footnotes and archived links, the dashcam clip replaced by newer stories, newer outrages. Yet the footage never truly disappeared. It lived on in training rooms and policy briefings, replayed without commentary, the clock allowed to run in full. New guidelines were issued, phrased carefully, debated quietly, implemented with the confidence of people who believed systems could still be adjusted without being dismantled. Maya Johnson returned to school, then to the small rituals she'd once taken for granted, walking home with friends, complaining about homework, arguing with her father about curfews. Some days were easier than others. Occasionally, she caught herself watching the digital clock on her phone too closely, counting seconds when she should have been thinking about something else. She learned how to sit with that, how to let time pass without fighting it. Her counselor called it recalibration. Maya didn't care what it was called, only that it felt possible again to breathe without checking the door. Chief Marcus Johnson remained in his position, navigating a department altered in subtle ways. Trust didn't snap back into place. It was rebuilt in increments through meetings, reforms, and long conversations that stretched late into the evening. At home, he was simply her father again, reminding her to wear a jacket when the temperature dropped, even as the days grew warmer. One evening, they sat on the porch watching dusk settle over the street, the air cool but no longer cruel. Maya checked the time out of habit, then put her phone face down beside her. The seconds kept moving, as they always would, but for the first time since winter, she didn't feel trapped inside them.